Thursday could amount to a couple of centimeters, but we recover temperature-wise back above normal and above the freezing mark, and then -1 on Friday. Now, the weekend does look substantially cooler, so prepare yourself for that. I'll have details on that coming up. Nick?
All right, Bill, thanks so much. Up next here on CP24 Live at noon, we'll take a look at Blue Monday and the impact the pandemic has had on children. Stay with us for that.
About whether they will get their second dose or not.
Stay with CTV News for every step in the fight against COVID-19. Tonight on CTV News at 6.
Closed captioning of this CP24 program is brought to you by Sambucol Black Elderberry. Natural health products to help support immune function. Sambucol it.
Welcome back to Live at Noon. Blue Monday is taking on a deeper meaning this year as Canadians and people around the world are really struggling with this pandemic. And joining me now live with more on this and how parents can help children is Dr. Natasha Sharma, founder of the Kindness Journal and a creator of the 8-Hour Therapist. Doctor, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, this started back in 2005 by a UK travel company and a life coach as a way to sort of sell exotic vacation destinations. Leave it to the corporate world to monetize malaise, as I always say. But there is a there, right? There are clinical things here. SAD, seasonal affective disorder. There is some truth, but not behind all this, isn't there?
Well, we can look at this in a couple ways. There are certainly some facts that we know. We collect certain data, and Blue Monday, I think it's based on some factual information that we've gathered. Things like it being the darkest day of the year in a lot of parts of the world. People's credit card statements come in, stuff like that. But those are just facts, really, at the end of the day. What they mean and what kind of meaning we start to derive and how we position those facts becomes more interesting. And I think that's kind of where I don't really agree with the whole Blue Monday thing and what it's doing to us potentially mentally. Seasonal affective disorder is, there's some evidence for some biological underpinnings to that. It's a little unclear and conclusive, but I think we have to be mindful about what is an actual problem and what we have adopted as a problem based on sort of that mindset that we've got into with respect to, like, for example, Blue Monday.
Right. There are the facts, then there's opinion and spin. But one thing we can all agree on, the reality, and it's a harsh one, is, this, what's being called the COVID wall. It's fatigue this round, but last time it was more about fear. It seems that we're sort of, bridging the two of them. It complicates our mental hygiene. It's a legitimate threat, especially for young people. Depression and anxiety, these can be contagions. These can be considered a kind of a virus too. What's the vaccine?
It's you. It's us. Now, that's not to say that people aren't experiencing actual problems. We're at a time in the world where we've always had problems. No one ever escapes problems in life, but we're definitely at a time where more people are experiencing more significant, real, actual problems. So this is not to deny that those problems exist.
Indeed.
And if you have problems, real ones, whether it's financial stress or you've lost someone, then you need to, of course, cope with and deal as effectively as you can with those problems. But for the rest of us, which is actually a huge portion of us, if maybe not the majority, at least us here in Canada, are not necessarily dealing with that level of problem. So I think we have to keep perspective in order to get through this. That's the vaccine, in my opinion, is, yes, it's difficult, yes, it's hard, but it's really all about how you're going to spin this in your own mind, right. and get through it and realize that, most of us are in a good position and being grateful for that and just kind of trying to focus as best as we can on what's positive and not focus on what's negative, because that will expand if you do that.
Absolutely, and we're not talking about, clinical depression, those kind of things. We're just talking about, again, this general malaise. But here's the thing, there is a pandemic paradox here. Isolation is the absolute best guaranteed way to manage and deal with and beat this virus, but it's also the worst way to be a human being, isn't it?
It is. It's difficult more for people, some people more than others. I know that I really enjoy my life out there, like with other people and doing things, and I'm sure many can relate. But I think at the end of the day, and this is going to be harder for some, depending on, for younger people, speaking about kids, this is harder for the age group that's sort of in their teenage years and 20-somethings. It's really hard. And I get that. Whereas for people who are closer to my age or even older, it's easier. However, it's also an opportunity. It's all on how you look at this, right? There is an opportunity to do and go mentally where we don't always have the bandwidth or space to go. And so I prefer to look at this as a little bit of a luxury and opportunity to understand what it is that we want most out of our lives. What do we want to focus on going forward once the world opens up the way we want it to again? Because this is a real opportunity to make those changes, to start that business you've always wanted to do, to make a job change, to, really focus in on your relationships, to get up inside of here and understand who this person is. And that only happens in quiet solitude. And we had so little of that before.
And that's the word. You know what? We can turn some of that isolation into solitude. Solitude is a good thing. And, living between your ears doesn't have to be all bad. Dr. Sharma, wish we had more time, but that's it for today. Thanks, and we'll continue some other time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Coming up next on Live Noon, we'll tell you about a new initiative launched by the Black Legal Action Center.
We're staying apart and always wearing a mask. It protects us all. Thank you for washing your hands over and over again. And thank you for staying home. It's not easy, but we can't stop now. So let's keep working together to make this year a healthier one for all. Ontario's doctors, we lead you to better health.
Were your long-term disability...
Welcome back. The Black Legal Action Center is launching a province-wide research project aimed at reforms in the education and justice systems. Joining us now live with more is Jody Yadun with the Black Legal Action Center. Thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, this is a province-wide initiative taking direct aim at the criminalization of black students, the so-called school-to-prison pipeline. Jody, what does the flow in that pipeline look like right now in 2021, and how is what you're doing in terms of advocacy and research looking to sort of, stop that flow?
For sure. So what we've been finding within the justice system is a huge number of young people that are being exposed to the court system are coming directly through our schools. And that's coming through suspensions, expulsions, having idle time, and finding other things to occupy themselves with. It's coming from policies and procedures that are currently in place within our school system that aren't accommodating our students that need supports. And what's happening is that there's a lot of situations that are happening within our school system that could be better mitigated, to be better supported directly within the school system. And so what we're looking to do is connect with families across Ontario and look at what are some best practices, what are some policies and things that we can do as a community working with our justice and education system to make some changes.
Jody, it's an ambitious project. It's very important, and it requires resources and partnerships. So who's on board?
So our project is funded by Canadian Heritage, and we're going to be working across 8 regions in Ontario. We're focusing on Toronto, Durham, York, Peel region, Ottawa, Windsor, Hamilton, and London. And so we're going to be reaching out to organizations in those communities that are Black-led or that are Black-serving, meaning that they're working with Black communities that are within their area.
There's unfortunately less attention paid, less scholarship invested into our own academic system when it comes to our own Black history and Black heroes. We get swallowed up into the monolithic American culture here when it comes to the African Canadian diaspora. The origin stories in this country, though, are quite different, aren't they?
For sure.
Tell us about that and how it relates to what you do.
Yep, so I think that Canada has a very rich history when it comes to our Black communities, our Black culture. We are very diverse as well. And so the hope for us in reaching out to 8 regions is we realize that our experiences they vary. And so for a family that's living in a more rural community versus a family that is living in a very diverse community such as Toronto, their experiences are going to be different.
Sure.
And so we really want to focus on what are the unique nuances within your community? What are things in London that the Black community needs to help support their young people, their students, to really thrive within the school system?
There's been a racial reckoning that's been, sparked, reconstituted by the murder of George Floyd and others, sadly, in the United States, largely driven by young people, millennials and Gen Zers. There's an old expression, the young want justice, the old want mercy. I mean, do you see this moment sustaining itself across generations and becoming not just a moment, but a movement?
Yeah, I really do. I've been doing a lot of work with the school system, and I've had the opportunity to connect with a number of young students. Spoke with a lot of high school students over the spring when we were in lockdown, and it was just amazing to me to hear about how motivated they were, how confident they were to speak up on moments of injustice that they were experiencing within the school system. And the sad thing about it is that a lot of what they were saying was the same thing that I experienced when I was going to school in the 80s and the 90s. But the difference now is that these young people, they're so vibrant, and their resiliency is just really pushing through, and they're really being advocates within their school environments.
Jody Dunn with the Black Legal Action Center. We really appreciate your time, and we wish you all the best with this program. Where can people reach out for more information?
For sure. So our website for the project is Black Legal Action Center, and you can also send direct emails if you want more information or if you want to get involved. The email address is dunnjd@lao.on.ca. dunnjd@lao.on.ca. It's a mouthful.
That's okay. Jody Dunn, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. Good luck.
All right, take care.
You too. Coming up after the break, we'll be hearing from some of the healthcare workers vaccinated at Toronto's new clinic. It's at the Metro Toronto Convention Centre. There's a lot right outside. That and more coming up with Nick.
More than 2,500 new COVID-19 cases reported today in the province. We'll have details and a regional breakdown. Toronto's medical officer of health says she's seeing improvement in the numbers of people staying home. The first city-run vaccination clinic for healthcare workers opened today at the Metro Toronto Convention Centre. We are live outside. Good afternoon and welcome to CP24 Live at Noon. I'm Nick Dixon. COVID case numbers for today, 2,578 new cases being reported. That is the lowest number since January 1st. There are, though, 24 additional deaths, 14 from long-term care residents. According to the province, 815 new cases are in Toronto, but the city's medical officer of health puts that number at 892. 507 cases are in Peel, 151 in York Region, and 76 in Durham. These numbers are based on testing of just over 40,300. That is the fewest tests completed in more than 2 weeks. Now, the province says nearly 9,700 doses of a COVID-19 vaccine were administered yesterday. Nearly 210,000 doses have been given out in Ontario so far, and 21,752 people have received both of the required doses. Now, the City of Toronto opening its first COVID-19 immunization clinic for healthcare workers today. CP24's Christina Tenali is at the Metro Toronto Convention Centre and joins us now. Christina, is it fairly busy there today?
Well, here's the thing, Nick. This is by appointment only, and the clinic opened at 11, so not quite busy yet. But keep in mind, the goal, according to the City of Toronto, is to inoculate some 250 healthcare workers a day. And again, a reminder, this vaccination clinic is only for healthcare workers by appointment only. So we've chatted with a few of them on the way in this morning. These are healthcare workers from all aspects of the community, including those who work in public health or shelter support and housing. For those in the healthcare community who wish to get the vaccine, this is hopeful news. Some tell us this makes them feel safer on the job. And also, one healthcare worker tells us this is moving in the right direction in terms of hopefully the goal is the more people vaccinated, the sooner life returns to normal. Dr. Barbara Yaffe, the province's Associate Medical Officer of Health, said recently we won't hit herd immunity until 60 to 70% of the population is vaccinated. So this site will prove, that is, as a bit of a blueprint for what vaccination clinics in the city will look like for members of the public eventually. Here's some reaction.
I feel like it's a step towards, everybody being able to go back, everything to go back to normal, I guess, I feel great because I feel like it's the first step in the right direction, just because a lot of people have been through so much, and I think it's the first step for Canada in the right direction.
I'm grateful and happy to be getting it, and I think any minuses are outweighed by the benefits.
whole idea here is to have a clinic that can vaccinate frontline healthcare workers initially. So it's not for the public, but vaccinate frontline healthcare workers, and in the process, learn the lessons that have to be learned so that when they roll out as many as 50 or even 100 of these kinds of mass vaccination clinics around the province, that all the sort of bugs have been worked out of the system, as it were.
So this is all part of phase 1 of the province's vaccination rollout. Phase 2 begins in April and includes groups like education workers and those who are within a certain age group, senior citizens, for example. Now, as for when members of the general public can begin receiving the vaccine, phase 3 begins end of July, early August. General Hillier had said on the weekend that if there's enough of a supply, his goal is to have everyone in Ontario vaccinated before then. But of course, it depends on how quickly the province can get access to a supplies provided by the federal government. And of course, Nick, we know there is that shipment delay or shipments being delayed of the Pfizer vaccine federally. Back to you.
The next 4 weeks will be a little slower. Christina, thank you. Time to check in with George Langajanis for a preview. What else is coming up, George?
Nick, thanks. Shortly, we'll be speaking with international lawyer from Deloitte, Chris Burkett, on this issue, this crude awakening for Justin Trudeau and Jason Kenney, that Joe Biden, president-elect, but president in a couple of days, is planning to kibosh the Keystone XL pipeline project on day one as president. This would essentially kill thousands of energy jobs north and south of the border and really drive a nail into the heart of Alberta's energy economy. It's a very important topic, and we'll try and get to the bottom of it in just a few minutes.
We'll look forward to that, George. Well, inspectors visited 240 big box stores in the GTHA over the weekend, giving out tickets and warnings for dozens of COVID-19 violations. According to the Ministry of Labour, inspectors found 75 stores were in violation of COVID-19 regulations. That means about 69% were compliant. 26 formal warnings were handed out, as well as 23 tickets under the Reopening Ontario Act. Labour Minister Monty McNaughton says that the stores involved are not being identified at this point.
It's not good enough. I mean, I've said clearly that most businesses have stepped up during the pandemic, but if there are bad actors out there, we're coming for them. We put up, as a government, and put out more than 200 resources free of charge to businesses, supervisors, managers, and workers on how to keep COVID out of the workplace.
53 orders were also issued under the Occupational Health and Safety Act during the big box blitz. Toronto's top doctor says the city is on track to exceed ICU capacity before the end of the month. During Toronto Board of Health meeting today, Dr. Eileen Davila says there's been a sharp increase in the number of cases since last month, so she is calling for people to abide by COVID-19 measures to relieve the strain on the healthcare system.
We are on track to surpass the standard ICU capacity that's indicated by the dashed line here on the slide before the end of January. This simply emphasizes yet again how important it is that to the greatest extent possible that we together as a community, each and every one of us as individuals, does our very best to maintain that distance with others, particularly maintaining distance from people with whom we do not live, in order to protect our health system to the greatest extent possible.
Davila did express some optimism about mobility and people staying home, though.
We know that COVID-19 spreads from person to person when they're in close contact with others, particularly those with whom they do not live. So certainly seeing this increase in device time at home gives rise to some optimism that the measures are starting to have some impact here in Toronto, at least in terms of mobility, and hopefully will manifest themselves in reduced viral spread and activity.
The Toronto Board of Health is considering recommendations from Dr. Davila on paid sick days. She has been pushing for the program to encourage frontline essential workers to stay home when they're not feeling well. Well, the Red Cross is being deployed to a Barrie long-term care home that is battling a COVID-19 outbreak. 9 residents at Roberta Place have died of the virus and 62 have been infected. 43 staff have also tested positive. Vaccinations began at the home on Saturday. 71 residents and staff members have been inoculated so far. And we'll be hearing from Premier Doug Ford later this afternoon. He'll be making an announcement from Vaughan at about 1 o'clock. The office of Vaughan Mayor Maurizio Bevilacqua says he'll be joining Ford for the announcement at the Cordalucci Vaughan Hospital near Jane and Major Mackenzie. Keep it on CP24 as we will bring that to you live when it gets underway. Again, that could be in about 20 minutes' time. Police still searching for a suspect who managed to escape the scene of a deadly shooting in North York. Officers were on patrol just before 6 last night near Duncan Woods Drive in Finch when they heard shots fired. They found a man suffering from a gunshot wound. Police and paramedics performed CPR, but the victim was pronounced dead on scene. A suspect was chased into a ravine but got away. Investigators say he was wearing a black mask and a red jacket. Well, today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the U.S. The day honors the life and work of the civil rights icon. It's held on the third Monday in January every year to mark King's birthday, which was January 15th. In a normal year, marches and events would be held right across the U.S. in King's memory, but they've been moved online this year due to the pandemic. Time to talk weather right now outside to our Bill Coulter. Not a bad day out there, but we're in for a cool weekend, you're saying, up ahead.
Yeah, we are. We're getting into a pattern that's going to give us a little bigger swings in temperature, and that means it's not going to be consistently mild because it has been for so long. We're actually going to get these little dips. One of those dips comes on Thursday, and then the next dip will come in on the weekend, where we'll top at about -4. By comparison, we're topping out at +1 today. We already hit that. We're sitting at 0 right now. A light northwesterly wind, making it feel a touch cooler than that, depending on where you are, but we are still above normal by a couple of degrees. So overall, not a bad day. And we have seen some morning sunshine giving way to afternoon cloud and the risk of some flurries as well late in the afternoon, overnight, through the day tomorrow. And then we get back into mainly cloudy skies on Thursday, and that's the cooler day. There's a look at your future cast. We are looking at some streamers coming in off Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. There'll be a pretty, or at least a little bit more significant lines of them during the day tomorrow, especially on the south end of Georgian Bay. So if you have essential service travel to do up towards those regions, both today and tomorrow, you may run into some poor driving conditions. There's a look at your future cast as we see things settle down late Wednesday into Thursday, but it does cool down. -4 Thursday, and then Friday. We start to climb up rather -4 on Wednesday. We rebound to -1 as we head into the weekend. It gets much cooler, -4 and -5 respectively. So not brutally cold, but there are some cooler days ahead. Sending it back inside.
Well, we are dealing with a minor situation for your afternoon drive happening on the QEW eastbound. It's on the exit ramp to Trafalgar on the right lane and shoulder, blocked with a stall. Again, this one not really impacting the drive. There's just a bit of steady traffic slowing down to take a look. Gardner into the downtown core in fantastic shape, and quickly checking out the 401 just as you make your way through the city. Not aware of any problems. We do have issues though on the southbound 427 outside of camera view. It's on the ramp to the eastbound 407. It's closed for a collision investigation. I'll send it back to you, Nick.
The CP24 traffic report is brought to you by CapitalDirect.ca.
Back in action at home tonight. The team hitting the ice at Scotiabank Arena this morning as they get ready to host the Winnipeg Jets. Toronto's coming off a 3-2 win over the Senators on Saturday.
That's some really positive stuff. We're still finding our way. A little bit of miscommunication, especially in D zone, but as far as working, competing is concerned, I think we've been doing a lot of good things, and it feels good to obviously get rewarded there on Saturday and get a big win out of that. I think we're still finding our way. There's a lot of new faces, but saying that, I think there's guys back there that are capable of doing it. So we're looking to improve every day, every night, and tonight is a good challenge for us.
Popping out is Boucher. He won't turn it down.
And the Raptors are going to be looking for their third straight win tonight. Toronto coming off back-to-back victories over the Charlotte Hornets. Raps taking on the Dallas Mavericks this evening at their temporary home in Tampa Bay. Tip-off for this one set for 7:30. Next on CP24 Live at noon, reports U.S. President-elect Joe Biden wants to scrap the Keystone XL pipeline. George has a conversation about that coming up.
Welcome back. CTV News has learned that Joe Biden plans to cancel the Keystone XL pipeline. Joining me now live with more on what this means for Canada is Chris Burkett, international lawyer with Deloitte. Chris, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you too, George.
So, we've been distracted lately. You got a pandemic, this invasion of the Capitol. Trump's impeachment. But this is a real civics lesson, isn't it, Chris, in the stark differences between the parliamentary and the constitutional democracies in our country. The power of a presidential executive order in the States, a lot can be done with a stroke of a pen. But my question to you is, could this end up in some form of international litigation, or does Biden really hold all the cards?
On this, an executive order will really tell the tale, and the suggestion is that Joe Biden is expected to potentially sign an executive order canceling the Keystone XL pipeline on his first day in office. And you've seen some media reports that those on the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, Bernie Sanders and others, are championing this move. So it's definitely consistent with some of what he said on the campaign trail about his plans for a green economy. But it's certainly a tough day for Alberta and Canada.
Yeah, tough day for Prime Minister Trudeau as well, right? Here's a guy looking for a reset with American administration along ideological lines, right? With this new administration coming in to fortify his power and standing up here because we've likely got an election coming spring or summer, and this whole thing could really reconstitute the Wexit and Alberta stand anti-federal liberal sentiment, couldn't it?
Well, it certainly won't help to quell that movement, and I know Prime Minister Trudeau was triumphing the move towards carbon tax and other measures. The fact that the Keystone pipeline was going to be much cleaner than it might have been some years ago, and some of the power generation was going to be based on renewables. They were really hoping that they could put in place measures to get this moving, and so he's going to have to fight on two fronts. He's going to try to through the ambassador and his connections in Washington, try to find a way to soften this and potentially keep it on the table, and also deal with people who are rightly very upset. Lots of high-paying jobs. There were many union jobs involved. You had 5 different Indigenous groups that had equity in this pipeline. So they had tried to make this as palatable as possible. And so it's certainly a blow.
And, Biden, made no mistake, he ran on environmental restoration and conservation, renewable energies. That was a big focus of the new economy for them, not in the near future, but now. Some form of this, new green or Green New Deal to jumpstart that decision. It's a pain for gain calculus. That's the way he's laid it out. I'm a straight shooter, and that's how he's been campaigning, and he'll govern, I'm guessing. Is it time for Canada to, really start thinking about giving up on what is the dirtiest fuel, the dirtiest energy on the planet, tar sands, giving up on the subsidizing of it and catch up to America?
So I think it's two things in parallel. I certainly think we can't miss the wave of green energy and the shift in that direction. But at the same time, even the United Nations has said that we're going to be burning fossil fuels for a number of decades to come. And so balancing those two is going to be key. I think you have to have a forward-looking approach where you're planning for the future, you're finding new technologies, and hopefully Canada can be a leader in that field. But in the short term, the U.S. is still going to rely on energy supply from Canada. We would prefer it to be bought from us rather than from other parts of the world. And so I think while this is a very political move by the new incoming administration, if it does in fact go through, I still think there's time for the Canadian energy industry to work closely with the U.S. in the short term. But clearly the long-term trends are off of oil.
Well, Chris, what about the greater effect on Canadian-American relations writ large, right? We're neighbors, we're allies, we're partners, we're friends. But, when it comes to this intersection of energy, hydro, nuclear, softwood, natural gas, it also puts, a wrinkle into the whole newly negotiated NAFTA, the USMCA. That's kind of in flux and in play now, too.
Well, in many ways, I think most people in Canada and at the government level are breathing a big sigh of relief with an incoming administration. There's obviously going to be tensions and there's going to be differences of opinion on certain issues, but a clear step in the right direction in terms of Canada-U.S. relations with the new incoming administration.
This is a complete non sequitur, completely off topic, but I've got you for another minute and a half, and I want to get your take on this. There's a lot of talk in the breeze today that President Trump, right, he's got a day left. Hundreds of people have been donating through other intermediaries to his political PAC and looking for, pardons. There's talk he's going to maybe pardon hundreds of people across the board in many different and disparate disciplines. What does that say about his potential legal exposure and his potential legal jeopardy? And can he try to pardon himself?
Well, he can certainly try. Obviously, it's not something that's ever been done, and whether a self-pardon would hold up is something that would need to be determined in the courts. But I think anybody that's been following Trump's actions over the course of his presidency, but escalating over the last number of months in the lead up to the election and then since the election, his respect for any norms, rule of law, are clearly not in place. So we've got a president who is unpredictable, and so I think we're all on pins and needles as we watch the last hours of his presidency tick by and hope for no further debacles.
Yeah, with that capital on lockdown, let's hope that presence is enough of a deterrent for any individuals or groups that have any ideas of interrupting it or anything worse. Chris Burkett with Deloitte, thanks so much. Great chat. We'll talk again soon, I hope.
Me too.